Kevin Costner is the face of the American West. Wide land, hard weather, and quiet strength. He is the man who looks like he was carved out of dust, horses, and long rides under a huge sky. That is the image the world knows. You think you know where a man like that comes from. You picture ranches, frontier struggles, and generations forged in the wilderness. But the picture in your head does not line up with the truth hiding in his bloodline. If you think you know the origin of the quintessential frontier man, you are about to see a completely different map. Before he became a Hollywood icon, Kevin Costner was a Baptist kid growing up in Compton, California. That combination stops most people cold. Today, the name Compton brings up strong public images of hip-hop and gang-era headlines, a reputation stamped onto it by later pop culture. But in the 1950s and 1960s, when Kevin was a child, it was a racially shifting blue-collar suburb where many white working families still lived. His father, William, started out as a lineman at the electric company and slowly worked his way up to an executive role. That climb upward brought opportunity, but it cost the family their roots. The promotions meant constant relocation across California and into other states. Kevin described those early years as deeply disorienting. He did not have the luxury of building one steady childhood memory in a single neighborhood. He was always the new kid, forced to step into unfamiliar rooms where everyone else already knew the rules. Through all that motion, the family held onto one anchor, the Baptist Church. His parents were conservative and church-going, and their faith gave the family a center when the map kept changing. If his school turned him into an outsider overnight, the church offered a predictable structure and a way to feel placed. He learned how to watch, how to read a room, and how to hold his shape while the ground shifted under his feet. The calm, rooted presence you see on screen was not born in a saddle. It is a survival skill learned by a boy who had to build his own steadiness because life refused to hand it to him. Even the name he made famous carries a hidden timeline. Costner sounds like a sturdy Western name, perfectly suited for a man leading a cattle drive. But pull the surname apart, and the cowboy vanishes. The Costner line did not rise out of the American West. It belongs to a family of German roots, tied to older forms like Kastner, Keistner, and Kestner. Those names point back to medieval Franconia and Bavaria. These ancestors crossed the Atlantic and settled in the Carolinas during the 1700s, long before the cowboy era had even taken shape. They were farmers and traders stepping into unstable, newly forming colonies. They had to adjust their language, religion, and daily habits to survive, slowly blending into Anglo-American society over generations. They held on to the name, leaving traces in church and land records, proving that the family line stayed and spread through the Southeast. Generations later, one descendant inherited that German surname and carried it straight into the heart of American frontier mythology. The man playing the Western pioneer actually came from a paternal line that had conquered the American wilderness a full century before the cattle trails were ever carved. But the German settlers are only one piece of the puzzle. The deepest emotional engine in his bloodline comes from an island defined by heartbreak. Genealogists traced Costner's roots to Graganamanoch, a small village in County Kilkenny, Ireland. This is where his great-grandfather, Michael Costner, was born in 1855. That year is incredibly heavy. It sits right in the brutal aftermath of the Great Famine. The worst of the starvation had passed, but the damage was permanently baked into the soil. The loss stayed in the land, families were shattered, and the intense pressure to leave stayed alive. Michael Costner faced a terrifying choice: stay in a broken world shaped by hunger, or break toward a new world shaped by massive risk. He chose to leave Ireland and head for California. That journey changed the family forever. It was a passage driven by desperation, carrying old pain into a country that promised absolutely nothing but motion. It was not a romantic adventure, it was survival. A century later, Kevin Costner would build a massive career playing men trying to hold ground in a harsh landscape that never gives easy mercy. In projects like 1923 and Yellowstone, he steps into stories about immigrants and working families chasing a future that is never guaranteed. He portrays the exact emotional gamble his own great-grandfather took. He is not just acting out a script, he is echoing the hunger and departure of his own bloodline. The Western frontier was built by families carrying old grief into new risk, and his own ancestors walked that exact path. That Irish rupture pulled at Costner in real life, too. He did not just stay in Hollywood and play pretend, he went back to the source. He spent years living in West Cork, Ireland, deeply invested in the story of an Irish revolutionary named Michael Collins. This was not a quick press tour or a casual vacation. He scouted locations, studied local history, and planned a massive epic biopic titled Mick. Costner later admitted that Michael Collins was a large reason why he lived in Ireland. When you look at his family tree, that obsession suddenly makes perfect sense. Collins fought in the same country that had pushed Costner's ancestors out. Collins belonged to a generation formed by the afterlife of famine, occupation, and loss. One man stayed and fought inside Ireland. The other man's family fled it to survive. By chasing the ghost of Michael Collins, Costner was trying to open a door into his own broken inheritance. He was an American star looking back across the ocean, trying to understand the wound that pushed his family away. Yet, there is another story Costner carried, one that lived entirely inside his own home. It is a story millions of Americans whisper, but when he carried it, it collided with one of the most famous movies in Hollywood history. Growing up, Costner heard a powerful family legend. His paternal grandfather, who was born in Oklahoma, was said to be half Cherokee. This claim did not come from a dusty archive or a stamped tribal roll. It came from the living room. It was passed from one generation to the next, told with the easy confidence of family truth. Oklahoma's deep native history gave the story a built-in weight. In a place so tied to the Cherokee, Choctaw, and Chickasaw nations, the legend felt completely natural and possible. Costner believed what he was told. He carried it into his public life, openly repeating the story in interviews. And why wouldn't he? When the family voice speaks, it arrives long before anyone checks a census page. The family voice is warm and trusted. A written record is cold. He did not invent a dramatic detail to bolt onto his name. He was simply passing along the inheritance of memory. Then he made a choice that changed American cinema. He directed and starred in Dances with Wolves. He did not just act in it. He built the movie around treating Native Americans with profound care and respect. He pushed for authenticity, working directly with Lakota advisors and insisting on using Lakota speakers on screen. He wanted a film that treated Native people with moral weight, not as background scenery for a white protagonist. That bold choice had immense force. It helped the film win 7 Academy Awards and even led to Costner receiving honorary member status from the Lakota. On screen, he became the ultimate bridge character. He portrayed a white soldier who enters Lakota life, learns their language, and earns a name that means something real in their world. The audience saw a man cross into another culture and truly belong there. But while the movie soared into legend, researchers looked into the paper trail of his Oklahoma grandfather. The documents told a completely different story. Detailed genealogies and multiple U.S. Census records listed his grandfather and his parents strictly as white. There was absolutely no recorded Native American ancestry. No tribal link appeared. no mixed-race status was marked. The written records did not bend. They drew a hard, permanent boundary between a beloved family legend and a documented lineage. This is the exact moment the whole picture shifts. The story of the unverified Cherokee grandmother is one of the most widespread myths in white American families. It is a story that softens the brutal edges of frontier history, replacing the harsh reality of conquest with a romantic feeling of mixture and connection. It gives descendants a way to feel deeply linked to the land without carrying the actual burden of documentation. Costner was not a unique outlier. He was a mirror of a national habit. The irony is staggering. Here is a man drawn to the sorrow and beauty of Lakota life, shaping a masterpiece film around that world, while personally holding a family story that fits one of the oldest, foggiest scripts in American identity. The movie reached toward historical truth on screen, while his family story stayed trapped in the shadowy zone of feeling, memory, and wish. But that gap does not make the movie mean less. It makes Costner far more fascinating. He did not make Dances with Wolves because a neat stack of genealogy papers gave him the bloodline right to do it. He was pulled toward the story and the moral seriousness of the culture. He stood at the center of a movie about indigenous dignity while carrying the exact same family legend that clings to millions of households. When you pull back and look at the entire sprawling map of his bloodline, you realize something profound. Kevin Costner is not just acting out American history on movie sets. His body carries the exact same story. He carries the German farmers who hacked settlements out of the Carolina dirt. He carries the Irish survivors fleeing the devastating, starving afterlife of a famine. He carries English, Scottish, and Welsh settlers, along with hidden traces of French Huguenot refugees. Every single one of these groups faced a brutal problem: stay in Europe and risk everything, or leave for a country across the ocean with absolutely no guarantee of success. They chose to leave. They chose the risk. Those massive decisions stacked up, generation after generation. They pushed further inland, intermarried, and blended their cultures together until the old lines vanished. They built something completely new. Over centuries, their constant movement and survival created the very frontier identity that Costner would later bring to life in front of a camera. The man who became the absolute symbol of the American West was never handed a simple, clean identity. He was built from a fractured, moving past, a Baptist kid learning to survive changing suburbs, a descendant of starving Irishmen and German pioneers, a carrier of a phantom Cherokee myth. When you watch him step into the dust on screen, wearing a cowboy hat and staring down a harsh landscape, you are not just watching an actor performing a part. You are seeing the result of centuries of movement, survival, and adaptation. The frontier legend did not start on a movie set. It was already written in his DNA.